Welcome back to Kurz Wind Conversations, the show where we dig into some real world insights from people within the wind industry. I'm your host, Robert Moore, and today I'm excited to talk to someone who truly represents the connection between field experience and leadership. Kyle Murphy from Upside Energy Services. Upside is known for their work in wind turbine maintenance, major component repairs, and helping operators stay ahead of unexpected downtimes. But today's conversation isn't about a checklist. It's about people. It's about decision making under pressure and the lessons you learn only from years on site. Welcome, Kyle.
Thanks for having me, Rob. Appreciate it.
You bet. You know, this is especially important to me. And I'm gonna take a minute and put this out there. When I started with RWE. One of the people that was my part of that leadership was Mr. Murphy. So I value this interview because he helped give me my start in wind, and he mentored me at a time when I really needed that learning process to understand the incredible profession that I joined. So I wanted to thank you for that, and let you know how really important that was for me.
No, I appreciate that, man. And yeah, it's no problem at all. I think in my time in wind, I've seen a lot of people come and go, a lot of new guys to the industry, and you don't know what you don't know. Uh, so everybody needs a little help and guidance when they first get started. But uh, yeah, it's
Thank
been great.
you. Bet it has been great. So, and one of the things we never really got to discuss because it just never came up at that time when we were working together. But I was always curious, how did you get your start in wind? Was it kind of like right from college or high school, like, man, I'm going into wind, or was there some sort of movement towards that from a different profession?
No, so I actually had no idea that really wind even existed. Where I was at in Indiana, there was wind turbines on the far west side of the state, but I'd never like ventured out and seen them in person. But 2009, I was in an electrical apprenticeship program, and coming out of the 2008, kind of economic crash or downturn, you'd say, went through a large number of layoffs to where they laid off half of our workforce at the company that I was working with. So after some time, I ran into my uncle later that summer in 2009, and he's like, "Hey," he goes, I got a buddy. He works on these wind turbines and works for this company, and they're getting ready to hire a bunch of people and give you your contact." And so I reached out, got an interview set up, and I still remember, very vividly driving to the interview and driving through the wind farm, and I was like, holy cow, what did I sign up for? And went through the process, got hired on, and was just brought in as a site technician to a new site that was being built. And, it all started from there, and just slowly over time, uh, learned the maintenance and troubleshooting aspect. Was a on-site technician, everyday climber for roughly 6 years. Just kind of worked my way up through the ranks and tech levels from 1, 2, and 3, and then became a lead tech. And then left there, did a short stint for another company, and then landed the job at the wind farm where you and I met at as a balance of plant technician, and got to learn the high voltage and distribution side of things. Um, and yeah, it's been good.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I remember it was BOP for when you and I worked together. You were ahead of BOP, so I learned a lot there too. That was amazing. Going from the journey that you have gone through, then now you joined and started Upside Energy Services. What led you to that movement?
So I feel like in old wind, there was a lot of time committed to the quality of service that guys provided to the tower. It was directly customer driven to, go up, as I stated earlier, I was mostly a site technician, so a lot of the focus was around the day to day and the customer. A lot of guys took pride in what they did. They did everything thoroughly, cleaned up after themselves, it's basically like your house. You take care of your house. You like to keep it clean for when guests come in and stuff like that. So over the course of time, at the site that you and I both worked at, obviously we saw a lot of contractors come through that wind farm, and seeing the struggle and the burden put on the site technicians going up after some of these contractors and just finding mess and trash and everything else. Like the quality aspect had kind of really, I noticed, taking a dive in the industry. And so, it's one of those things that you can either complain about the problem or you can find a solution to the problem. So, I was down at ACP in San Antonio a few years back, and got to talk to several guys that I'd never met before. Some I knew throughout the industry, heard their names, and guys that started their own companies and had some success with it. And so that's where it kind of all clicked. There was just going old school and focusing on providing a quality service to our customers day in and day out with everything that we do, and empowering our people to do that, not rushing them to do a job, uh, expecting them to do it in a quality manner and a safe manner. And we do that from the top down. When we started this company, it started out with just the four owners, and we slowly grew up to now we have 17 employees.
That's awesome. And if I remember correctly, too, some of those contractors at our mutual site were also asked not to come back at some points,
Correct.
because of some of the very problems that you were discussing. And
Yeah.
that's nowadays too. When I'm talking to people within the industry, that's the same thing. I say, hey, be careful with what contractor you're hiring, because some of them, you got dropped items, you got just leaving messes everywhere. Completely agree. For those watching right now, Kyle here's the guy who was outside not only just teaching but leading by, like, hey, let's get this picked up, let's make this safe, and that's what you want in a service leader like yourself. At least that's what I would want if I was a site owner. So that's awesome. So we all have defining moments, or mentors that have shaped us in our leadership. What is some of those people in your life?
I wouldn't say that there was one defined moment. I've, been fortunate enough, growing up as a kid playing sports, you're surrounded by a lot of good coaches and stuff like that really push you, to be better throughout your time in athletics. But then, when you transition to, the workforce, um, you have a lot of bosses, and I would say that leadership is a skill that has to be developed over time. I don't, from being a leader for quite a while, you're not always going to get it right. Just like parenting, you don't have a playbook on how to be a parent, but you go with the flow and you figure it out as time goes on. But I've seen both good and bad leadership. I've seen guys, from the turbines to the boardroom, have leadership skills, and you know, you gotta be able to identify that. Especially when you're trying to build a company, you got to be able to identify the guys to where it feels like it comes naturally, and then help build those guys up to where they can take over and be field leaders for you, because your leaders in the field are what really matters, and you got to figure out how to support those individuals to ultimately help you get the success that you guys want as a team.
Agreed completely. It's all about that mentoring process, about that cultivation of, you know, even now, where I'm at, I'm seeing people who they're future leaders. In the military, I always like to go back to this one a drill sergeant we used to have, where he'd say, you got some people who are screaming at people and yelling, and he's like, I don't really do that because I'm not raising future privates. I'm raising future leaders. And so and that's kind of, I always like to take that and remember when I'm talking to some of the people that I work with that, hey, I'm not here to beat you up with a hammer. I'm here to mentor and teach, and hopefully one day you're the next leader. And, so I'm passing that on. So I love the way that you put that. So it fits right with how I feel too. So I'm I'm
Absolutely.
I'm very interested in your field experience now, especially with what you're doing. What are some of the most, like, say, you would say some of the common challenges that you see from site level crews and operations type lead?
Yeah, with our customers.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think everything that, we as a company, as Upside Energy Services stands for, you know, traveling around the country and stopping in and meeting with a lot of the site personnel to try to gain a relationship, try to offer services to them. The one thing that we constantly find is, the main thing that we focus on, which is the quality service that guys are providing, the transparency process that's involved with, uh, sometimes over promising and under delivering. I think that sometimes people, uh, you know, don't stand behind the word that, they offer the service that they're trying to sell. And, then obviously, a little plug for you, but parts is another issue. A lot of customers out there you know, try to do a self-performance style of maintenance on their turbines. Um, Hire their own people, provide their own parts and service to the assets that they manage, and sometimes those are challenges.
Definitely. I mean, you and I alone have felt that when we're at site together. So I agree. Uh, you know, with how you and your team approach high risk, high impact type repairs like gearbox swaps, blade wear, how does that look for you? How do you make sure that things are going to go off without a hitch?
So we have our own procedures that we've developed in house, and we're still continuously building off of those. A lot of it is tribal knowledge. So the first guys that we look to hire were skilled guys that we've worked with in the past, or skilled guys of guys we have on board with us. But primarily, we approach the high risk jobs by making sure that we have competent people on the project and not just one person leading four or five guys. We make sure that there's multiple guys because in these high risk environments, high risk situations that involve cranes and high voltage and hydraulics and stuff, um, we want to make sure that there's at least two competent individuals that know the job from top to bottom, at least know pretty much every step to where, it's always good to have somebody with a similar amount of knowledge, because when you get into a decision making process in those high risk jobs, you want to be able to remain calm and bounce ideas off of another person, and not just have somebody that's there that's not as skilled or hasn't seen the job as much or had the experiences. You want to feel confident that you can complete the task without, you know, calling out to somebody else. And, if we feel like we don't have that, then one of the owners that has those skill sets will be on site to help support that and see it through. Because as long as our people are successful, we're going to deliver on everything that we said to our
And
customers.
kind of what you're saying too is a really good segue for what I was thinking too. Is um, obviously at some point the conditions on site are not going to be favorable, and you're going to be forced to pivot on what you're doing. I always like to call it, say, like, no plan survives first contact, right? So you can come up with the best plan possible, right? And I know you're good at that too. So, but at some point, conditions are going to force you to pivot. And can you maybe give an example, like how's your crew handle that type of situation?
Just communication awareness. If we show up to do a specific job, and we notice that there's another problem that's involved with the scope of work that we've been hired to do, we'll identify that, relay that to customer, and ask them, hey, you know, whether it's an in scope or outer scope, if it's something that we can tackle in parallel with the job scope that we're there doing, we'll get it done for them. We want to be that kind of one stop shop customer, or provider for our customers. So we just make sure and guys are open eyed. It's not fixated on one thing. It's like, hey, we're going to observe our environment here and see what else we can do to help this customer out and get this asset to produce for a long time after we leave here.
Yeah, I'd say like that. You're basically saying, hey, don't get that tunnel vision. Keep
Yes.
the eyes wide open so that we can see the full, the turbine, just in case there's other things or problems. So yeah, I like that. I like that. So, you know, uh, with what you do, obviously, I feel like you're touching both that executive level and the asset manager level, right? Because you're falling in on equipment possibly when you're at site to work with the platform. But what do you think? There's something that maybe they could understand better about the realities of what the work that you're bringing to the site in the wind O&M.
You talking about the executive level management versus
All
like
the way.
what actually transpires in the field?
Yeah, like all the way down to that asset manager. What is something that you would like them to maybe let them know or better understand in the realities of what you do?
Yeah, I think that one of the things that people need to understand that are calling shots for the people in the field is the physically and mentally demanding requirements of being a wind turbine technician. I don't think a lot of people understand that. Um, a lot of the tooling and parts and equipment that is utilized to maintenance a turbine, you know, is heavy, and you have to load that out into kits that are easily to move around from place to place. You have to hoist them up tower. All of your tools got to go up. If you forget something, you got to come back down or radio down to get it. There's the people, keeping people safe aspect. Uh, if you have some young guys on your staff that maybe aren't as skilled, you have to point out and identify the hazards that to be aware of, ensure that they're, operating in a safe manner. There's high voltages, there's hydraulics, working at heights, all of it. So there's a lot of, I'd say, pressure daily on a tech performing the work. And then when you add in to those technicians a lot of the administrative stuff, the safety checklist paperwork, etc., and then ensuring that all that's completed for the day, because if that wasn't completed, then the job wasn't completed safely, all that stuff, it all comes into play on a human, you know, when they're trying to complete their job. And then those people got to go home and be responsible for families and stuff like that. From the executive side of things, yeah, there's mental stress and you're trying to problem solve, but you're you're in an office environment. I'm sitting behind a computer right now. There's stresses, but not near the guys that are putting in the work and out in the elements too, not to mention. I mean, the the steel tube magnifies the heat and magnifies the cold. So you have those stresses and environments involved. I think that if more people, there are a lot of guys in our industry that have worked their way up from technicians and know that struggle and are now executives, but there's a lot of folks that have never gone and stood in the shoes of a technician and performed an entire maintenance or performed the troubleshooting or perform the component replacement aspect of things. So if there's something that would need to connect better to understand, um, I think it would be that.
Yeah, definitely. I remember, I myself, I'm not a tech, but I tried to empathize as best I could when I with those guys because they would just come back caked with grease and dirty and hot, especially on those hot days. That's tough work, and if you're, I remember some of the guys we work with, they were very, very good techs, and some of them would climb possibly 3, 4 towers a day. So
Hmm.
it was definitely very hard for them, and I felt for them. So believe me, yeah, I get that point. So, you know, I think one thing that we have to do, even though we're a young industry, I still believe, I think one thing that we have to do is start to look ahead. And from your vantage point, what does
Hmm.
the future of wind maintenance look like for you?
The future of wind maintenance. So, I mean, I just very simple. As long as they're putting towers up, there's always going to be towers that need maintenance. Uh, every year I feel like there's a lot of new construction that goes on. They're advancing the platforms, the size of them, the outputs, etc. To lessen the footprint. But as long as turbines are going up, there's always going to be some sort of mechanical or electrical failure uh, that's going to need high skilled guys to go in and perform routine maintenance and also replacements.
Agreed. Agreed. I always tell, like, some people will ask me, it's like, oh, uh, various governments go back and forth, don't like wind, do like wind, renewables, whatever.
Mhm.
And I always like to tell them, it's like, it doesn't matter if they stop making wind turbines tomorrow, there'd still be, many, many years of maintenance and to keep the ones that are out there running. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
20 plus years.
20
Yeah.
plus years easily. So,
Hmm.
I don't get too worried about that type of thing. So, but I do agree with you. We're going to continue to grow. They're going to get bigger, or at least more output, as we move forward. So it's a wonderful industry to be in. I love being in wind. So that's awesome. Uh, you know, the as the industry is doing enough to build workforce capacity and retain experience within the operations side, like with the techs and what you're doing. Are we doing enough to retain skilled workers?
I would say yes and no. I think a lot of retention boils down to um, guys not knowing that there are other opportunities out there. Like for instance, if you're a site level guy and you want to travel and see a little bit more of the countryside, there is that opportunity. There's a lot of companies out there. But also, I mean, there's other opportunities where you can possibly relocate to, if you want to go home every night and not travel. There's just a lot of opportunities for young guys in the industry. You have the construction side, you have what we do from a contractor standpoint, where you go site to site and do different replacements, and then you have your on-site guys. Um, you have traveling maintenance technicians just going around performing regular routine maintenances. But the training I have, we work with a few different companies in the industry, and I have seen an uptick of more standardized training over the last several years. They went to the GWO certification for climb and rescue training. They've added in basic technical training that gives you, torque and tensioning, electrical, hydraulic knowledge. So the basic needs are there. I think that there's more that we can do on that level. And it really comes down to just platform specific. I think the safest way that you can approach, day-to-day operations is by providing the proper training on that specific platform that guys are going to work on.
That's yeah, exactly. And it is amazing to me, like, how much there is for techs to do, like to like you said, to go other places if they really want to, to become a specialist on one platform type if they want to, travel like you said, or if they just, like, want to settle down, bam, it's there for you at the sites. I think the key difference is going to be, like, what kind of work are you also going to be interested in doing? If you're at a site, possibly you're just going to be doing those annual maintenance, semi-annual maintenances, and maybe not like as large correctives and stuff like that, right? So there might be some type of work that others are excited to do, like blade work, for example. I myself wouldn't want to do that, particularly with all that glass, all that plastic, right? But I get it. So I I just want to make sure that I want to retain. I don't want people to ever change their industry. Just their business card is how I feel within wind. Keep people around. So that's what I love
Yeah.
about this.
Well, and with renewables too, it's not just wind. I mean, you have
Yeah.
solar, battery
True.
storage, etc. And seen a lot of guys transition out of wind into battery storage and solar over the years, and those, two parts have blown up quite a bit,
Hmm.
in the last several years. So, there's plenty of opportunities for guys to get in and, get involved in renewables in some way, shape, or form.
That's absolutely true. Like I don't know if by chance you were at the Clean Power Show this year, but the battery storage seems to be really blowing up. I saw more battery
Hmm.
storage this year than I'd ever seen in the past. So that was pretty
Yes.
awesome.
Yep.
So how does Upside Energy Services kind of approach innovation within our industry, whether it's through people or tools, or maybe you're, like you said, you're creating some of your own processes. How does that innovation look?
Uh, well, we target empowering our people. Again, from an ownership and a leadership standpoint, we had a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge between, the owners. There's over 50 years of wind experience combined. And we also know that we don't have all the right methods of how to do every single job. And we like to hear from our guys that have different mindsets and different viewpoints to kind of weigh in on that decision making. But, ultimately it's seeing how our guys perform and empowering them to make, you know, their own decisions and own choices and helping mold and shape that. And like I said, working on procedures with our guys, having them be a voice to the growth of our company, being a small company. I mean, you have to rely on your people heavily to provide all the things that you want to stand behind, to give to the customer. Those guys are now the face. When we first started out, we were the face of the company. We were the ownership. We were the representation of Upside Energy Services, and now our guys are that face, that image that get to deal with the customer day in and day out and provide that same quality of service that we originally set out to do.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And with what we talked about earlier about the mentorship and leadership, I suspect the guys that you do have that are the face are doing exactly that. They're emulating what you have taught them to do. I like
Yeah.
that. That's awesome. All right, so you have quite a history of successes, starting at the basic level of a tech. Now you're the president of your company.
Hmm.
That's a long walk, right, between those two. From that, to me, if I feel like you would have maybe an opinion or a mindset of something that you would like to influence the industry in one way, what would that influence, if you had that power of that over the industry, be? What would you change?
Hmm. It's a good question. I think everything we talked about before, believing in your people. Your people are going to take you as far as you want to go, and empowering those people, empowering the what you said earlier, the leaders of the future, right? Um, you know, if I could change something, it would be to encourage guys to go out and chase dreams more. I mean, a lot of guys, especially at the site level, you only see your world each and every day. And this industry, yes, it is small, but it spreads across the entire United States, and there's a lot of opportunities out there. So don't ever feel, stuck to your small environment. There's the mind can open up once you see everything there is to offer.
Definitely. I always say, wind is this large global entity, but it's a small tribal group,
Hmm.
in reality. So, I think there's 11 techs at the wind farm that we used to work at together, and it's
Hmm.
125 turbines. So, small tribal group, large global entity. So, go chase your
Yes.
dreams, people. Don't get stuck in one place. I completely agree with that. All right. So, now let's transition to, now you had the chance to affect the entire industry with that last question. This is what Kyle Murphy thinks the industry should do. Now, let's pull it back and let's talk to the guy who just started in wind. What does Kyle Murphy have to say to him, either as a tech or even someone on the service side or whatever? What advice would you be giving that guy who's just starting now? You what, like 15 years ago?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, just be open minded and be a sponge to learn. Ask the right questions.
Mhm.
Be observant. Uh, just just be open. Be willing to take on roles and responsibilities without you know believing that you should receive a monetary incentive to do so. Like essentially do extra stuff for free. I mean, I've been in multiple both this industry and past industry to where I've taken on, leadership roles, safety
Yep.
roles, etc. that didn't come with, an additional stipend, but it gained me knowledge and experience in that, field to help better me, grow as a person over time. There's a lot of opportunities. And I think a lot of companies do a good job of creating a lot of opportunities. If you want to transition from being a technician to being an inventory coordinator or in some sort of management or whatever, there's a lot of opportunities to where you can pivot as an individual into a different role that better suits your skill sets that you have.
Agreed. Agreed. Because again, just we have history, right? I remember standing
Yeah.
in that BOP room. Kyle, what's this? What's it do? And you took the time to explain, even though I'm not a tech, but I wanted to know,
Yep.
because I felt like it would help me when I was dealing with the, getting product in for you guys to go out to the turbines and do the fixing. I needed to understand that, hey, a stainless steel slip ring versus a bronze slip ring, that's a lot of weight difference. But
Yeah.
why would we use the bronze? Well, because so forth and so on. There's certain reasons that we use that over stainless steel. But I remember asking questions all the time of you, and you were nice enough to sit there and explain it to me. So I really
Mhm.
appreciated that when I was, and I'd say that for, again, I'd echo the same thing you say to anybody who's new in the industry. Ask questions, ask a ton of questions, and keep asking questions. Don't stop, because it's always changing. The technology is always changing and getting better. Just keep asking questions. Be that sponge that Kai was talking about. So, you know, for me, I'm passionate about win. I'm passionate about what you and I do, right? And I'm going to ask you the same thing. What keeps you passionate about the industry that you're working in, that what you're doing?
I think one, it's the people that you get to meet throughout your journey and the relationships that you create with these individuals. I'm still in close contact with guys that I started with. I mean, this Sunday coming up will be 16 years I've been in this industry. It's been a huge part of my life, but the relationships that you build, especially being a technician, you climb up tower every day, you work together up 300 feet in the air, you get to know a little bit about each other. It's not just work relationship, it's also personal too. So the relationships that you build is key.
I completely agree. I completely agree. So,
But
I
but the
love.
other thing, the second part to the question, sorry, Rob,
No,
but
that's okay.
the work that we do is is really rewarding too when you break it down to the simplistic form and think about it. When you can take $1 million machine and you have the knowledge and capabilities to go, remove all the pieces to take that, rotor apart and put it down on the ground, trip it up to where you set it flat on the ground, and then change out the components and then put it all back together. It's every little kid's dream. You're very hands on. You get to, be technical and stuff like that. But then, you know, a lot of times when we arrive to the tower, it's offline because of a failure. And then once you put in a week's worth of hard work and, like you said earlier, pivoting on the job, things arise, things come up. You have to make in the moment decisions uh, that might have been different from the last tower, the last job that you did. But collectively as a group, you decide, hey, this is the new path forward. Um, but once you put everything back together and you can hit start on that tower and watch it go back online and connect and be like, yeah, I mean, it's
Yeah.
super rewarding.
Yeah, big time, big time. That was awesome. That was a perfect way to come to kind of a close here. I love what you said. Everything people pay attention to what he just said. So, it is very rewarding. And I'm not even the technician. I was just the parts guy that get making sure that that could happen for you. But it was still exciting even for me to, like you say, to see that thing. Hey, it's down now. Let what can we do to make it better as a team and get it running again? So, Kyle, I really appreciate your time. Your story, kind of your insights that you've been given here. It's leaders like you that are going to keep this industry grounded, that they're going to, in reality, and it's going to keep it moving forward with a purpose. To everyone listening, if you got value from this episode, I'd love for you to follow and subscribe on Spotify and YouTube. You can also kind of connect with us at Kurz Wind Division on LinkedIn. You can learn more about Kurz itself at www.kurz.com. And then also, don't forget about Upside Energy Services. If you have needs with service work, please reach out to them. Kyle, you want to throw your website out there for them?
Yeah, it's just www.upsideenergyservices.com.
There you go. You heard it. So go connect with Kyle. Obviously, you can tell from this episode, you're getting quality personnel, you're getting quality work from them. And we'd love it if you could connect with both of us in some form or fashion. This is Kurz Wind Conversation. I'm Robert Moore. Stay safe, stay curious, and keep the wind at your back. Thank you.